Hello and welcome to another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. I'm your host, Chad Marshak. I'm here at Physiotherapy Professionals today with Bridget Cutler and Leah Benti Hulcher. Did I say your last name right,
Yes,
Leah?
you said it right.
Okay. The show today is Run Away from Pain, and we're basically going to analyze running technique. A lot of people run, as we know, and you see a lot of runners. What are some of the things that you typically see here at Physiotherapy Professionals?
We see a lot of iliotibial band syndrome, knee pain, hip pain, and back pain from runners.
I know when I drive my car and I see runners a lot, I'm not a big runner, but I used to run a long time ago. Everybody that I see typically has some type of a gait problem. They're, mechanically, I'm scared to look at them. I'm in pain even. So what do you do when you analyze someone? What are some of the things that you look for? I know during the first segment of this program, we're going to talk about how to do that and what you're looking for and some of the things that you can do to maybe correct your mechanics and become a better runner.
Well, one of the things is not everybody's built to run, and everybody has a different body type. Everybody has different fiber twitches. We have fast twitch runners. We have slow twitch runners. And people are born with certain congenital basically abnormalities or misalignments. But the other thing is we tend to get muscle imbalances from doing the same thing over and over and over again. Well, running is such a convenient way to lose weight, stay in shape, get cardiovascular fitness, that people in general are like, I'm just going to go out for a run, and they don't think about some of the things that you need to do to get ready for running, like wearing decent running shoes that match your foot type. That's probably the biggest problem that we see with people who just want to go out and run. They don't do any form of exercise to strengthen and lengthen specific muscles. They don't think about stretching afterwards. So there's many different things that we would do when we evaluate somebody to improve, first of all, improve their efficiency, because, if somebody's running like this with their arms like this, it's going to be a lot. You're going to have less efficiency than somebody running with their arms straight. So we would look at all those kinds of things, and basically evaluate what they're doing wrong and also what their muscles are doing.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and cut to the chase and get somebody on the treadmill and talk about what you would do as far as evaluating someone.
Okay. We're going to have Bradley Blevins up on the treadmill. He is a physical therapy assistant here at Physiotherapy. Okay.
Brad, let's go to it. What do you think about treadmill running, by the way?
Well, it's not the ideal. It's really not. You can just get started. As fast as you can for 5 minutes. It's not the most ideal, but in this climate, in the middle of winter, it's definitely better than nothing. The other reason that I like the treadmill is because it also takes a little impact away from somebody who's running on concrete all the time. But it does definitely alter your gait. There's no doubt about it.
Great. Well, let's talk about Brad here, and let's see what we have. What's the first thing you look for?
You want to go? Go. Okay. We're going to look at we're going to look at positioning from the side and also from the front. We're going to look at pelvic positioning. We're going to look at where his feet land in relation to the rest of his body. Look at his whole posture, his upright posture. I'm going to go around to the front. And then we're also going to look at him from the back. We're going to look and see what his heel strike looks like, what the back of his knees are doing, because oftentimes you can tell a lot about how strong the hips are from the back of the knees. Look and see if his pelvis is level, and he's pretty much perfect almost. But what we can do to accentuate what's going on with the legs is we can actually have him fold his arms in front of his body. So Brad, can you fold your arms in? And now you can see we get a little bit better look at what's happening with his lower extremity. And he rotates evenly both ways, which is really good. The backs of his knees are facing back towards the camera, which is also really good because that means he doesn't have any weakness in his hips and he doesn't have any hip drop on either side. Just what I'm noticing.
When I look at a runner, I notice I usually look at somebody from the ground up. I'll take a peek at their feet. And oftentimes when I see somebody, running on the street or at the park or wherever, their feet, one foot's like grossly pointing out, or in, or you've got all kinds of problems with their hips dropping or knees collapsing in, or one shoulder's elevated higher than the other, and it's so painful. It's just the cumulative effect when somebody is biomechanically inept, for lack of a better word. It's just, you know, they're really opening themselves up for a big can of worms and problems in the future.
And some people are, their tibia, their lower leg bone, may be put on their body where it's rotated out or rotated in, and there truly is nothing that any of us can do about how the tibia or even how the hip is set in. But those are the people that we have to watch and educate and say, maybe you're not the person that should run much over 3 miles 3 times a week. We don't like to tell people that, but if someone really has a bad, truly bony deformity, we have to watch that. There are many things that we can help if it's a tightness, if it's a shoe change, but there are people out there that probably shouldn't be running, and then we encourage them to cross-train.
And how important are shoes?
Shoes are huge, and being analyzed without your shoes on about how much your foot crashes down or pronates and how much supination is where you stand on the outside of your feet. Finding that out is large, because people that supinate need more of a cushioning shoe. People that pronate need more support. Some people even need orthotics.
I know the running center in Springfield does a really good job at analyzing what a runner might need.
I definitely recommend that everybody go to the running center, not only because they know what they're doing, but they have great shoes. They support a lot of community races, which is a wonderful thing, and they just do a wonderful job. They will get anything for you, whatever you want. And they also have a lot of equipment for when you injure yourself, because runners injure themselves.
Absolutely.
So do we think Brad looks good?
I think he looks pretty good.
Brad's getting fatigued. He's starting to lose his form a little.
Brad's a track runner, so he can't run for long.
A lot of people have a higher percentage of fast twitch muscle fibers, which, the type 2 fibers are fast twitch, built more for, they're built more for speed, like Brad.
So let's see what Brad looks like when he runs fast.
Okay.
Just 30 seconds fast. Fast. An interesting thing you can see, as soon as he starts running fast, his legs come right underneath his hips. And a really important thing is you'll see that his legs come up behind and his shoes almost hit his backside. That is good sprinting form. And he can stop whenever he wants. The other thing is his arms. You talk about his arms, lady.
In track, your hand should go pretty much nose to pocket, and Brad's got that form going on, and as he ran faster, his hips came up higher because he needs that drive in his legs to be a sprinter. So, good form, Brad.
Thank you. All right,
and I think that was a good example of why you need really strong hips when running, because as you could see, when he was coming up, he really got a nice propulsion, but his legs were really propelling him back. He almost started leaning forwards, which was really perfect form.
Now I think we're going to throw you up there next, Bridget.
As an example of the
Okay.
bad form.
So now we're going to give you the bad form. I'm just kidding. Okay.
It's not pretty. Does this look silly?
Okay, what are we looking for here in Bridget? Now I know that you've actually been training with Bridget for years.
Yes.
Too long.
So I kind of know what I will be looking for. Bridget has a foot that's a little bit arthritic, which you'll know which one soon, looking from the angle from behind. Bridget could also probably have a little more drive in her knees. She doesn't raise her legs up quite as much as she should. The trick is Bridget's more of a long distance runner. She's done marathons. She's done half Ironmans. So when you're running 13 or 26 miles, you're not going to run that whole way with high knees, or you would never make it unless you are a Kenyan. So I can't expect that Bridget is going to have the form that Brad had. Brad was a sprinter in high school and college. So you can see, Bridget doesn't bring her knees up as high. And then we're looking at Bridget's right foot again. I need to look from the back here for a minute. Yeah, Bridget, both of her feet tend to, she has a tibial torsion. that really causes her feet to go out when she runs. That's probably Bridget's biggest fault. Little bit weak in the hips, but not bad. She works hard at trying to keep her hips strong. I know that. So overall, higher knees, and we can't do a lot about her feet because that's just how they're put on her body. Her arms look good. She's moving them forward and back properly. Her head's up. So she's not quite as bad as what she claims she is.
Why does my knee hurt then?
That's your...
Why does her knee hurt?
Why does her knee hurt? I think it's how her feet are put on her body. It just puts extra torque on her knee. Her tibia is not set on her body quite straight. So she just has to keep rolling that IT band out. She's a little bit tight in that, and there's not much more she can do about it. Have those good shoes and keep that foot in shape.
Now, the second segment of the program, we're actually going to discuss some of the exercises that people can do specifically for runners that will help with any muscle imbalances or, biomechanical flaws
Yes.
that they have.
Nearly every runner, myself included, we need to strengthen our hips because, especially the long distance people.
Running in that same plane really wreaks havoc on your body. So running the same direction.
Yes.
You got to do some of the other exercises that are going to help strengthen the muscles that work the other plane.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I went to a conference. I've been to multiple conferences, and they kind of teased that even triathletes were still mostly in the sagittal plane, which is forward and back, and these muscles just get overworked, the front and back muscles, and we've got to it's important to strengthen and get those lateral motions.
Okay, let's look at the bad hip here real quick.
So right now, we actually see this a lot. Bridget is over-exaggerating where that left hip goes out. Not to pick on women, but we see a lot of this in women where the hip gets weak, and as they keep running, those hips go out, and that person's going to come into me with hip pain, knee pain. And we see a ton of women running like this, and they have got to get in that gym and strengthen. That's the only way to correct it.
My hips, that's there.
I tell you what, we're going to, about halfway through this first segment, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the corrective exercises. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Personal Health and Fitness. I'm your host, Chad Marshak. Again, our program today is Run Away from Pain, and we're here at Physiotherapy Professionals. And we're going to talk about some of the corrective exercises that runners should probably do to avoid injury and correct any of these biomechanical imbalances. So what do we have?
Well, the first thing is if you're a runner and you're not doing any strengthening at all, you need to start. There's absolutely no question, especially the lower extremity. And I see a lot of runners, and they go, yeah, I go to the gym, I work out, and they all work out their upper bodies. None of them work out their legs. That's probably the most important thing. The thing that we, as we were talking about earlier, see the most is weakness in the hip abductors, or the muscles that go out to the side, or the hip rotators that rotate the hip outwards.
Into external rotation.
So a fault for that would be when they're running, their leg kind of twists in and they do like this whole hip out. And what's going to happen, you're going to get hip pain, knee pain, and sometimes iliotibial band pain. Mm-hmm. So probably what the most given out exercise that I give is the clamshell, lying on your side, external rotation. So I'm going to show you that one.
Okay.
And I just want to say too, when we talk about the iliotibial band, we're kind of saying that without explaining it. We have a band of tissue that starts up in the upper part of the hip, comes all the way down into the lateral knee. I had it once upon training for my first marathon, which I wasn't able to ever do the marathon, but it will give you knee pain on the side of your knee like you have a knife going through it. I mean, I was convinced that I had a meniscus tear or something really mechanically wrong with my knee.
And that's a hard area to stretch, and
It is.
it's a very difficult area, and that's why I really love foam rollers to do the myofascial release, and we're going to talk about that here in a few.
But along with this, even though the IT band is tight, it gets tight often by that position we put our leg in, which can be offset by this hip strengthening. Okay. So that's why this exercise is so important. So this is the clamshell.
Let's talk about this clamshell specifically, what she's doing, what she's working, and why it's effective.
Well, she has her knees bent to about 90 degrees, and then she has her hip forward some. So she's in the perfect position. I get a lot of people, they want to lift the whole leg up, really the beginning position,
Right.
and they start rotating their body.
And their whole body's rotating
Yeah.
instead of...
So we want feet together, and we want her abdominals to actually be engaged, so she isn't rotating her whole body all over the place. And then it's simply a lift of the knee. Now that is going to work this outer area of her hip, which is where she's burning right now. This muscle rotates the hip out. And so many runners, now there are a few that run with their knees apart, but a lot of people start to rotate and turn those knees in, especially as we get tired. So this is to counteract that act of when we get running, the hips rotate in. So and I think every runner in the whole world should do that, and at least 2 or 3 times a week.
So how many sets, how many reps for that exercise?
It depends. If you're first starting it, I'll say start with 1 set of 10, every other day.
And
then
there are varying degrees of strength as far as the
Yes.
tubing. It's a small circle tubing. You can find these online.
Yeah,
There's some people who have to have no resistance when they start.
and that's true too. So depending, usually, I mean, we go by the 2 to 3 sets of 15 to 20, but that's if you're ready for it. In the beginning, not quite that much.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to do a little foam rolling for the IT band now.
So now Bridget is laying right on that iliotibial band. In general, this does not feel good. It's quite painful, in fact. And you will wonder why in the world your physical therapist would have done this to you. But every runner, honestly, should do this. We see, oh my gosh, tons of people with iliotibial band tightness. The stretches for it are varied and not great, but this is one thing. What happens is that foam roller gets in there and it deforms that iliotibial band, and it'll loosen it up probably better than anything.
So ideally, when I teach someone to use the foam roller for this IT band exercise, I typically have them, they're on a search and destroy mission. They're trying to find their hot spots. Any really little hot trigger point, you'll know when you run over it. And you may have to kind of rotate your femur, your leg, slightly forward or slightly backwards to seek out those hot spots. And once you identify that really painful area, typically you want to leave pressure on it, so your body weight should remain at that spot for roughly 20 to 30 seconds. Then move on to the next hot spot and continue until you work from your hip down to your knee and you find all those little hot areas.
Yeah, and you got to make sure you get all the way down to that knee, because that's where the iliotibial band does tie in. It actually ties in all the way into the knee joint, into the lateral meniscus.
Right.
And we've got to get all the way down there by the knee, and that often does not feel good. And all the way up to the top of the hip.
I don't mind.
Yeah, it's got to be done.
It doesn't hurt you, Chad.
It doesn't hurt me. Not anymore.
So there we've taken care of quite a bit of the hip. Bridget has one more strengthening exercise that we often give for the hip. The trick with this one is her toe cannot be pointed down. If the toe points down, it's going to make the iliotibial band tighter.
If the toe is pointed down, the TFL kicks in more.
Exactly.
So, and that creates more imbalance, especially for runners.
Right.
So the angle of the foot is key here.
Yes.
And ideally, I like it, Bridget, you taught me to do it against the wall. So if your shoulders and your butt and your back of your leg are against the wall, the heel is actually going to slide up and down the wall. So she's not against the wall, but in an ideal world, you would do it against a wall, typically, correct?
Yes.
I like people to do it.
Yes, because too often the leg will want to come forward because the hip flexors in the front tend to be tighter, and they'll take over, and we don't want that. We want her to be straight. I tell people, lay down and be straight like a pencil.
Right. And again, the key here is the foot position. So point it up roughly 30 degrees.
Yes.
This is not 30 degrees. This is neutral position, and definitely never down because it moves to the front.
Right.
And that's not what we're trying to do, which is going to make matters worse. If you're here or here, people, don't do that.
The only side note
Angle foot.
is if their hip, like my right hip, is probably not set quite right in the joint, and it's really hard for me to get my toe up, hardly at all. So, and you got to explain that to people. Your hip may not be like everyone else's hip. So
Right,
You
right.
do the best you
You
can
still
to get
have
that
to
toe
try.
I understand
up.
that.
You have to.
Let's talk about hamstrings. Hamstring problems with runners. Would you care to share what you know?
I've never had a hamstring injury, actually, and I believe that's because I have a better balance between my hamstrings and my quadriceps muscle.
But a lot of people don't.
A lot of people don't. And that's the biggest problem, is that their quads are too strong and their hamstrings are too weak. And that would be Leah and Brad.
Yeah, I've fallen.
I noticed that in Brad. It's okay, Brad. We still like you.
Yes. And hamstring, oh, they're hard to get rid of.
Okay.
Hard to get rid of.
What are some corrective exercises that you can do to strengthen the hamstrings that you would recommend? And also, go ahead.
One of my favorites for runners is the thing with the hamstrings is it works eccentrically when you're running, okay? So it's like kind of lengthening. It's working as your quad's lengthening, and then it's expected to grab when you hit the ground.
Right.
So the two things that I like the most are the single leg Romanian deadlift or the
Well, let's demonstrate that.
Single leg Romanian deadlift. The key to this, and Leah is
She's balancing on one leg. She could hold dumbbells if she would like.
Dumbbells. And the other key to this is to really try and get the pelvis straight so that she's getting both the inside and outside hamstring, because there's two different hamstrings. And if she has a tendency to want to lift this hip up too far, she's only going to be strengthening her outside hamstring and not her inside hamstring. So that is really important, and this is a hard exercise to do. You can either do it with a straight leg like she did, or you can also do it with a bent leg as well. That tends to be a little bit easier.
Okay. Let's demonstrate that real quick, just so people have an idea how to do that one. The bent knee hamstring exercise. So bend your knee. I'd even bend it more. Go ahead, Bridget. Show. So let's. So it's a tough exercise. So you really want to bend the knee when you want to go down. And again, as far as maybe if you're a beginner, then maybe one set of 10 to 15 reps. Then as you progressively become stronger, then you want to maybe 2 to 3 times a week, 2 sets to 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps of that particular exercise. Rest a minute between sets.
And actually, if I'm rehabbing somebody who's had a hamstring injury, oftentimes what I'll get them to do is lean over a table with a weight on their leg, and I have them hold the weight up and then drop and pick up. Drop and pick up. So they're in that running
lengthening
position.
And then,
so they're lengthening, and then they have to catch it and pull it back up.
I like that.
And that's kind of that concentric going to eccentric phase.
Sure. So it's going to kind of simulate the running aspect.
But that Romanian deadlift, it takes time to. I've had a couple of the top runners in the city come in, and they cannot do that exercise. So it takes motor memory to do it. So don't just give up on it. I've had people are like, "There's no way I can do that." If you run all this way, you should be able to do that, because running, you're on one leg for a while, so you should be able to do that.
You're always on one leg for a split second. You could also, if you need to, hold on to something in the beginning, something that's going to brace your body, which will allow you to do the exercise. And again, the hips are really important to make sure you keep the hips on the same plane. Don't elevate one butt cheek higher than the other, which is going to create, again, imbalances in the hamstring musculature, which that's what we're trying not to do.
People always want to lift that one hip. So you got to have somebody look at you too, because it's hard to feel when you're not doing it right.
Do you ever encounter tight calves, people that have problems with their calves?
Yes, lots of tight calves and lots of plantar fasciitis.
What are some issues? The plantar fasciitis is a big concern for the people that I see, and oftentimes I end up sending them here to you. What are some of the things that you could do to counteract that?
With the plantar fascia, you do have to stretch. I mean, runners are typically very bad about stretching.
Let's talk about some of the couple of basic stretches to combat that.
Right now, Bridget is doing a straight leg stretch for the calf. The calf has 2 muscles, the soleus and gastroc. Now she's doing it bent-legged. This one is huge.
So the angle of the knee joint, this is going to get more soleus. With the knee bent. The knee has to be bent. If it's straight, it's more gastroc, or the calf that you see here. Soleus is underneath, attaches down here and runs underneath what you can see here visibly.
Right. The other thing I'm picky about is the position of the foot. I get people when they're turning their foot out to do it especially. That's not the way to stretch the gastroc and soleus. But when those muscles are tight, that'll play into the plantar fascia issue.
Because you could be stretching your calf muscle like this, and you could have your knee all the way over like this. Well, that's not going to help your knee, and you're only stretching the inside of your calf, not the outside.
That's great. We've got a couple of minutes left here. Any closing points? Any particular exercise we want to add, or?
We've got one more exercise. I'll demonstrate this.
So this is a unique piece of tubing. You could actually take just regular old tubing and tie it, make a loop and tie it around your ankle if you wanted to. This actually has a cuff.
Yes. And this is for people to get the proper hip drive. So we have people go like this, and then I'll bring the arm up. I don't want to hit the mic.
Hit it.
So they're getting that hip moving in a proper pattern. We get so many people in here that are short striding it, not getting enough hip extension or not driving enough.
Plus the hip stabilizers on the stabilizing leg is really having to
Absolutely.
work hard too. So the glutes are kicking in.
Yeah, and this makes you do the proper hand position with the leg as well, which so many people don't do.
And again, if you're a beginner and if you don't have really good balance, you could obviously hold on to something to stabilize your body. Gosh. I'll tell you what, we're about out of time here. Any closing points?
If you have any questions about what exercises you need to do, you need to see a personal trainer or a physical therapist, because they're the ones that know the things you need.
Personal trainers don't know anything. I don't know anything.
I don't know anything.
Guys, I appreciate you helping me out
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you very much, Leah.
Okay.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
Physiotherapy professionals, they know what they're doing here. Thanks again for joining me on another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. Until next time, I'm your host, Chad Marshak. Hey, Quinn and Riley.